You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Interesting note to kick off the show about Game 1 of 162, the opener against the Tigers, where you saw Garrett Crochet have a masterful game. If he continues to stretch out and go deeper into innings, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to hold back getting too excited about it because I want to see how long he can keep it up. Does he have it in him to go an entire season and be that effective? But he looked great. But an interesting thing from that game, umpire scorecards, and we've had the creator of that. It's like an algorithm that looks at what Major League Baseball's own data is when it comes to correct calls at the plate by the home plate umpire. They put out scorecards. They're automatically generated just looking at what actually happened, where the pitch was, and then what the umpire called. And they give a rating to the umpire behind the plate. So Brian O'Nora was the umpire on the 28th of March for opening day. He had an overall accuracy of his calls behind the plate of 91%. He was 91% consistent. And he swung a 1-0 game based upon 3 impactful missed calls to give the Tigers 0.95 runs, more than what they would have gotten based upon the algorithm. By the way, the Tigers won 1-0. Now, I think that's amazing, that statistic.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, because generally you go, okay, there were some missed calls, and the umpire scorecard says it had no impact on the game. I find it interesting that in a 1-0 game, he gave them a run according to umpire scorecards. Now, would the White Sox have ever scored in that game? Probably not.
Not the way that they were going, no.
You could have gone out there for 20, 25 innings, and I don't know if they would have scored a run because the only effective guys they have at the plate are their 3, 4, 5 hitters, which should really be their 2, 3, 4 hitters. We've talked about this between Robert and Jimenez and Vaughn because nobody else did anything. You know, Mr. I'm going to do the little things, Yoan Moncada. All I saw were neon accessories and really bad plate appearances.
Yeah, that was pretty much the story of the game. I mean, to get your starting point about Garrett Crochet, can he stretch out like that? The number of pitches he threw was not that high. I mean, it really wasn't. And he was just efficient. He just went after hitters and he changed speeds and he moved the ball around and did all the stuff you're supposed to do as a starter. So I think he can do that. The question is, will he be as effective every single time out? Or is he going to have a situation where, you know, you're going to see him get clobbered, and that's bound to happen again too. But
well, it's all about efficiency for him, though.
Right, it was pitch efficiency, and look at Michael Kopech's inning, where Kopech uses 30 pitches basically to get out of that inning and gets himself in all kinds of trouble. Can't find the plate, walks a guy, hits a guy, and then Crochet, who's sitting there, he's throwing strike one. He's using his slider to get strikes. He's using his fastball to get strikes. He's moving the ball up. He's moving the ball in on guys, and he's not getting some of the calls that Andrew Vaughn got jobbed on, in getting strikes that were called that were basically in on his hands and out of the zone that Skubal was for some reason getting, and particularly against Vaughn, and particularly in one big situation there where Vaughn also then has the stupidity of after fouling a ball off the knob of his bat and being very, very shocked by that, not getting back in the batter's box in time, which is shame on you, Andrew Vaughn, for not having your head in the game.
Opening day was a thing, especially at Cork and Kerry at the Park, 33rd and Princeton in the shadow of the ballpark, the proud sponsors of Sox in the Basement, the podcast for fans by fans. They have an award-winning menu of burgers and ballpark favorites and an extensive bar with a rotation of craft beers, familiar favorites, spirits, and wines. A great place to bring the family before the game. It is live post-game over there. Quite a party. Your home base for White Sox pregame, postgame, and viewing parties is Cork and Kerry at the Park. Let's talk about that efficiency, though, because I believe that's the Brian Bannister philosophy. I know I was flipping through the radio channels. I believe that's who I was listening to on opening day. Everybody was doing a bunch of White Sox coverage. It's the one time of year when when like the Cubs weren't playing yet and all the radio stations were out at different locations and everybody was covering the Sox for a couple hours. It was amazing. Okay.
Just because it was the only thing going on. Right. Yeah, there's no real draft news. We know that Caleb Williams is going to be drafted by the Bears. The Cubs don't start until the night.
Right. Illinois wasn't playing in a game for another day or so. By the way, ILL.
INI.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The interview went like an explanation as to why Crochet became a starter. And I guess he was challenged by the team that if he wanted to be a starter, it was all about efficiency. He had to get through an inning in 15 pitches. And he immediately started doing that right away, showing them that he could get through an inning in 15 pitches. Michael Kopech can't do that. That's why Michael Kopech isn't a starter. I think that was the litmus test. It may not have been how effective are you? Are you getting a bunch of outs? It was a thing that we've been yelling about forever. Like, look at the pitch count on some of these starters, and it can't be that high that early in a game. And Michael Kopech was one of the biggest offenders of that, and that seems to have been the new philosophy that was introduced to all these pitchers. If you want to be a starter on this team, 15 pitches or less. That's what we want to see generally from you every inning when you're starting a game for the Chicago White Sox. I love it.
And Dylan Cease was a guy who was a huge offender of that in the past couple of years too, where even when he was a Cy Young runner-up, inefficient, walking off the field after 4 2/3 and 100 and some pitches, great outing, but not nearly deep enough. I felt like Crochet, the way he was pitching yesterday, could have gone into the 7th had he had more starts under his belt and been a little bit, if it wasn't the first start of the season. And that's not a Garrett Crochet problem. I think that would have been if Mike Soroka was out there, if Dylan Cease was out there, if Lucas Giolito with a functioning arm was out there. Heck, if Mark Burley was out there, they might have pulled him after 6, just because, first start of the season, you do tend to see guys get a little bit shorter of a leash on pitch counts, especially in this day and age.
Everybody around the league was getting that. Zach Gallen was out there, I think, for 5 innings. He's on my fantasy team. Like I looked at like my fantasy totals from opening day, and all my starting pitchers did not go deep in the games because it's the beginning of the season.
Right, exactly. So, but Crochet was, and I couldn't make it out to the ballpark yesterday for opening day, but watching him on TV, what struck me was that he's got the great stuff, and he was just going after guys. And on the broadcast, John Schifrin was talking about how, and Steve Stone was talking about how the improved defense does help the pitcher's mindsets about being able to go after them. And you occasionally saw Garrett Crochet get a relatively quick out, a ground out or something like that, or somebody flies it out to the outfield. The one thing that the Sox did not do on opening day was they didn't give that game away. Okay. Did the Tigers get kind of a cheap run? Yeah. Did the umpire maybe give it to him, statistically giving them 0.95 runs by his errors? Yeah, maybe. But, at the end of the day, what more could you ask for from your opening day starter than a quality start, 1 run over 6 innings, a whole bunch of strikeouts, kept guys off base for the most part, didn't give up any real hard contact, allowed his guys to be able to get out there in the outfield and get easy catches, allowed guys on the infield to be able to make fairly easy plays. Even the one that Lopez doesn't make that kind of ends up leading to the run, that wasn't exactly an easy play, and that was one of those ground balls. I mean, Lopez had it. He kept it in front of him. It stayed in the infield, and you do feel like in years past...
It went off a glove, didn't it? Didn't Crochet tip it or something like that? Like, that's the other thing. Like, you have a very good defense. Keep your glove off the ball, pitchers, unless it's coming directly to you, because the guys behind you are going to suck it up.
Yeah, and you do feel like the ball took just enough of a funny hop that Lopez trying to barehand it, when you saw it in slow motion, it got him. It just kind of caught him at the top of his hand, and you can't do anything with that. So you've got a good defense, and when you get good pitching like that, it is going to be an offensive issue. But Garrett Crochet was efficient. He was working quickly. He was throwing strikes. The defense was ready. They were ready to go behind him. Maldonado didn't have to do a whole lot to help him, just set up, and he was hitting the glove, and he made it look really, really easy, and that's what you want from the starting pitcher. But when Kopech comes in a clean inning, it's not like Kopech came in with the bases loaded or something like that. He comes in a clean inning and immediately starts getting into trouble because he hits Kerry Carpenter, who hadn't had a plate appearance at that point, and it falls down from there. He walks a guy. The ball's going all over the place. And yeah, Kopech's got the great arm, and yes, he got out of it. He got the strikeout when he needed it, but holy smokes, that was a 30-pitch inning off of a clean inning out of the bullpen. And that's the kind of inefficiency that the White Sox suffered so much of in the past. that, you do end up with the defense on their heels a little bit because they're sitting there waiting, wondering what you're going to do. And it's that much harder to do this when you're getting guys on and the defense doesn't have a chance to make a play, or Maldonado doesn't have a chance to call a good strikeout pitch for you because, your fastball's way up high, or it's way, you ground one, or you can't throw your slider over to buy a strike when you need to throw it for a strike. Crochet didn't have that problem. The few changes I saw him throw didn't come anywhere near the plate. He's going to have to work on that. But for the most part, when Crochet wanted a strike, Crochet got a strike.
For exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high-pressure sales with Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. They're not in your kitchen with a dingy window. They're not in your living room with a dingy sample window. They're not hanging out in your kid's room. That's weird. Instead, you go to their showroom. Not weird. You meet the owner on site. Another owner is on site when they install back at your home. They're using all Window and Door Superstore installers. They don't farm out the work. They've been doing it this way for over 40 years. All major brands are custom made. No stock items for a perfect fit. They're a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. Let's talk a little bit about the philosophy of game-to-game managing of this team. We talked about this in depth when Tony La Russa was managing the White Sox early on. We talked about this. I think I was trying to justify to people why it might not be so bad. And in the end, it was bad.
Well, historically, Tony La Russa was a manager that actually impacted his team positively. Made a difference.
There was a study that was out that went through, I remember we got in this really deep on the show. Study was out and it looked over 100 years of baseball and all the managers and their decisions. And it had come up with about 5 or 6 guys that had had a positive influence that was actually measurable on the outcome of games for their teams. And the conclusion was that most managers over 162 don't have a tangible impact on wins and losses because they may make a really good decision on Tuesday and then on Friday night they screw up the game and they net zero impact for the week. And that in the end, most managers are not having a massive impact on wins and losses. They have an impact on culture. They have an impact on, I think this guy's the best player at this position, so I'm going to put him in the lineup all the time. They have an impact on who they believe is their leadoff hitter when other people might sit there and say, I think I would drop Tim Anderson down, but they're stubborn. They can have impacts based upon those things, but the game-to-game impact of in-game decision-making is negligible for most managers all throughout baseball. I feel like this is where Pedro's in over his head. Every manager in the world, I could sit there and I can look at and say, okay, this guy misidentified who the leadoff hitter is, or this guy just doesn't seem to understand that so-and-so doesn't have it anymore, and he might be a veteran, but why do you keep plugging him into the lineup? I think you're going to see that all across baseball. I know with the White Sox, over manager in my life, I've seen that happen at some point with almost all of them. My thing with Pedro is that I wonder if he's got the chops, and I don't honestly believe he does, to manage a team like this 2024 version of the White Sox. Because if you're going to go pitching, and let's assume they've got good pitching overall this year, and you're going to go defense, and let's assume they've got really good defense all year long, and you're going to have a team that's going to have to manufacture runs and really only has a couple of guys that are run producers and hitters, then you have to manage differently. You have to find a way to make an impact to scratch out wins so you can actually get that team a better result over 162 than what they are on paper. This is the type of team in which a strategic manager who has an impact is needed. You always hear this thing defense wins championships, pitching and defense wins championships. And there was this team, the Hitless Wonders, and there was this team that didn't have a lot of offense, but they found a way to win. They generally had managers that were really good at maximizing what a guy could do. So I've been kind of thinking, even after game 1, things that I wish that I was watching my manager do. One of them, Ed, is that in the 8th inning of a game where it's 1-0 and the bottom of your order is coming up and Maldonado's going to come to the plate, I don't care if there's nobody on base, everybody on base, a left-handed pitcher, a right-handed pitcher. Somebody needs to be coming off that bench and hitting for him late in games. And the backup catcher needs to come walking in to finish the thing off almost all the time. Because if you're in a close game, that guy should never grab a stick in the late innings based upon his ability or inability to hit. He's not a hitter. He's a defensive catcher. Late in the game, he should be substituted almost nightly. And I know it's opening day, but it should be your philosophy throughout the year.
Yeah, stuff like that will be where Pedro can really make the money and make the difference because Dominic Fletcher was sitting there, and Fletcher had a terrible spring, don't get me wrong, but Fletcher's sitting there and he could get on and he can get a hit. You could argue that Corey Lee, based on his hot spring, should get an opportunity with the bat, and they even talked about Corey Lee in the broadcast about how he had gone in with making changes at the plate to try and be more effective as a hitter than he was last year. So yeah, at some point you do sit there and go, okay, well, is this where when Max Stassi comes back from his hip injury, are they going to carry 3 catchers so that they can move Maldonado out?
But philosophically, if you're going to have a team that plays defense, essentially, and you're putting a premium on the White Sox way, which I saw Chris Getz, and we're going to get into his interview on Foul Territory with AJ Pierzynski, because I loved what AJ did during that interview. But you're going to change the culture, and I hate that word, but change the way they do business, right? You're going to flip your roster as much as he did and bring in a different way of playing the game. Then you have to then strategize and in-game make decisions based upon the personnel that you have. You have a catcher that is going to very, very rarely, over 162, maybe he gets a hit in the later innings twice, 3 times over the season, right? Somebody will point out, oh, he had an RBI in the 8th inning a year and a half ago. It's going to happen at some point. It's baseball. But if you look at his lifetime batting average and what he brings up there when he walks up to the plate and his advanced age and the way that he's even fallen off in the last couple of years, even worse at the plate, he should never see home plate after a certain point in the game. When you're trailing and you need a run, when you're in a close game and you need to find some offense, it should be almost a regular thing that you're rotating him out. You got to have a guy, even if you don't carry 3 catchers, somebody back there has to be available as emergency catcher if after you do it, Stassi or Lee hurts themselves in the 9th inning. They always have a guy like that, right? There's always some guy who can put on the gear, right?
I assume that's either Shoemaker or Andrew Vaughn.
But here's the thing, that is such a rarity. You may have to cover that once over 162. It's worth the risk for the increased ability to advance runners and possibly get a late inning run. Otherwise, what you're saying is, late in a game when you need a run, you're just going to sit back and not get one? Because that bottom of the order is so bad, not only on paper, but in reality, that if you get to a late inning and it's going through the 7, 8, 9 spot, people could start heading to the exits. That music means only one thing. The Sox Nerd, Dave Marin, returns the Sox in the Basement for his weekly check-in. He got his first taste of the 81 games that he will be sitting up there, putting up all the tidbits and the trivia on the scoreboard. Many more games to go ahead for him, and he is brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore. There's all kinds of live music next weekend in Lamont at several different hotspots there. See that and more at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, how are you? You in mid-season form yet there or what?
Yes. Opening day, despite the outcome, was a beautiful day. The weather was fantastic, and it was great to see everyone. And, hey, it was done in 2 hours and 3 minutes, so we can't complain about that.
Yeah, it moves fast when they're holding everybody to the time limit. Andrew Vaughn screwed up, and he was out as a result.
Yes, and as a pre-nugget, that was the second fastest opener at the new park. The only one that was faster was the 2005 opener that they won 1-0 against Cleveland. But, Chris, That is not what I'm talking about today. A few nuggets on Garrett Crochet's performance in Thursday's opener. The left-hander looked like a seasoned starter, giving up just 1 run on 5 hits in 6 innings, even though that was the first start of his professional career. Crochet became the first White Sox pitcher since Roy Patterson in 1901 to make opening day his first professional start. Patterson's assignment came in the White Sox inaugural game, which was also the first American League game ever. In addition, Crochet was the 9th pitcher in the last 110 years to make his first start on opening day, joining a list that includes Fernando Valenzuela and Hall of Famer Lefty Grove. Opening day was the 24-year-old's first start in a meaningful game since March 7, 2020, when he struck out 6 while giving up 2 hits in 3 1/3 innings for the University of Tennessee against Wright State. 95 days later, he was drafted by the Sox, and 69 days after that, Crochet made his major league debut, where he threw 4 of his pitches over 100 miles an hour. Starts have been few and far between for Crochet since he enrolled at Tennessee. Thursday's appearance was just the 17th time out of 138 appearances he has started a game. The 6th-inning start Thursday was his longest in a long time. The last time Crochet went past 6 innings was on May 11th, 2019, when he tossed 6 1/3 innings for Tennessee in a game where he got the win despite giving up 7 runs to Florida. Crochet's longest start at Tennessee, by the way, was an 8-inning effort in a win over Cincinnati on March 9th, 2018. And then there were the strikeouts. Crochet fanned 8, which are tied for the second most by a Sox lefty in an opener. The great Billy Pierce holds the top spot with the 9 he whiffed in the 1957 opener. Crochet accomplished those strikeouts with no walks. He joins Dylan Cease, remember him, who did it last year, and Gary Peters, who did it in 1969, as the only Sox pitchers to strike out at least 8 with no walks on opening day. Crochet is the only one to do it at home. I guess this is just a long-winded way of saying that I'm really looking forward to Crochet's next start. Some bummers. Friday was the White Sox first shutout loss on opening day since a 3-0 whitewashing at Kansas City in 2003. That was Jerry Manuel's last opener as Sox manager. And the 1-0 loss was the first time the Sox were blanked at home in a season opener since a 12-0 drubbing at the hands of Minnesota in 1970. That, by the way, was Nancy Faust's first game as Sox organist. Before I get to my zinger, I want to credit Chris Kantka and Sarah Langs for their contributions to this segment. And if you want more gems like these, visit my blog, which can be found at soxinthebasement.com. My zinger? How about one more on Crochet? He was the first 45 to start for the White Sox on opening day since Carlos Lee in 2004. Of the 5 Sox players other than Crochet who have started on opening day wearing number 45, only one, Orville Grove in 1944, was a pitcher. That's it, Chris. More than you probably wanted to know about Crochet, Roy Patterson, 1901, the Volunteers, and the number 45.
Sox in the Basement listeners, here's the deal. When you combine State Farm home and auto insurance, you save an average of $889. State Farm agent John Harrell is ready to help you combine home and auto and save in Chicagoland. Give him a call today at 708-481-4500. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Average annual per household savings based on a 2019 national survey by State Farm of new policyholders who reported savings by switching to State Farm. You don't have a complete offensive team. You may find that you have a complete pitching staff before this year is over, especially with the young guys that can come up. You may find that you have a complete bullpen. You may find that you have a complete defensive alignment because they have some guys that can throw the leather, but you do not have a complete lineup. And with your lineup and your decisions as to how you're going to run that lineup and how you're going to substitute throughout the game, that's where Pedro Grifol that's where he can have the greatest impact. That's where if you look at the end of the year and people will be making arguments as to whether or not they should move on from him, that's going to be the number one thing you're going to be talking about. is how his decision making with his lineup and how he employs, like, bringing in guys off the bench for poor hitters that were in the game and started the game because of their defense, how he does that late in games. I didn't see it opening day. It needs to change. Hopefully Chris Getz will have a conversation with him. I mean, Chris Getz had a conversation with A.J. Pierzynski on Foul Territory, and I want to give A.J. Pierzynski a lot of credit. It would be nice if other people could sit down, have podcasts with Chris Getz. I would love to talk with Chris Getz. I think we've been very friendly to him on this show. I would love to have him on this show. Okay.
Great.
And it's funny because AJ treated Chris Getz in the way that you would think the Sox would be trying to avoid their general manager being treated, right? Like, I don't think you'd have a pool reporter say what AJ Pierzynski said to Chris Getz. I don't think that you would have the White Sox home network say to Chris Getz what AJ Pierzynski said on Foul Territory. But he goes, what do you need to do this year? What is a successful season? And Getz starts talking about building trust back with the fan base, and AJ interrupts him and goes, that's what Rick Hahn said last year. You can't give the same answer as Rick Hahn. And you could see that Getz was thrown because it's a video interview.
Yeah, you get that look on his face of like, oh, man.
Folks, you probably already know this, but the White Sox are very, very careful with how they present the people that represent the team with the public, right? Like, and you may not have noticed it, but I noticed it as somebody who's been around in media for decades and worked for terrestrial radio stations and now runs his own media company. And Ed's done it for years and years and years. And we were already talking about it. Like, their PR department's doing exactly what I would do if I were them. You have a team that nobody believes can win. Everybody's picking to get about 60 wins. Ozzie Guillen actually said it, like 60 wins. And if Pedro does more than that, he should be manager of the year. Like, I mean, like nobody believes this team's going to be any good.
Right. No one has any faith there.
Right. Your season ticket sales are just cavernously down. Like, people just left, right? You could still walk up and get tickets on opening day. It's bad. It's bad, right? And so they're doing exactly what I would do. They're reaching out to fan blogs and fan podcasts that have said publicly already, I don't care if they win or lose, I'm just going to go to the ballpark no matter what. And they have embraced that. Right? They got their new play-by-play guy out at a tailgate before the game starts. They are mentioning those kind of entities, and good for them too. I don't feel bad about it at all. Good for them. I don't expect that for us because we're more of a, like, this team's terrible, you should cancel your season tickets. I don't fit into what the PR department's trying to do. But like,
we're taking sort of the opposite tack of the PR department.
We're very critical, and we want to see a winner. Like that. Like I get it. I enjoy going to a ball game. I'm going to go to them this year, right? Like, I'm going to sit out there knowing that they're not that good. All right.
Yeah.
But, and I'm going to go because I like the ballpark. Okay. But there are some that have, like, really hampered, like, I'll keep going. I still have my season tickets, and they have done a very good job of embracing that. Like, they know that's their only way. They've got to appeal to the fan. That's the ride or die. I don't care if they lose 110 games. I'm going to go out and spend $200 a night at the ballpark. They've lost everybody else. So they have embraced that fan. And that's exactly what I would do if I were running PR for the Chicago White Sox. They also are very, very careful about who they allow to talk to who. And Getz gets on that show with Pierzynski, and you could see he did not expect AJ to say, you're just saying the same thing as the last guy. Like, I loved it. You couldn't imagine somebody saying that to him in most interviews. They're so careful about it. But it's AJ, and he won a World Series for him, and he's beloved, and he doesn't care, and he's not even a journalist, so he's just going to say whatever he's saying. And I laughed out loud, and I loved it. And it's not because I want to see Chris Getz get hurt in an interview, right? Like, I would treat him very nicely if he was in here, because I get what he's doing. It's much to the detriment of me. Like, a lot of people have criticized me recently, like I'm being too nice to him. I get what he's doing. He's hamstrung by an owner.
I can see the plan here. We can see the vision that he's got.
He's hamstrung by a cheap owner that doesn't want to spend a lot of money this year. I see it. But AJ was on him with the whole idea of like, well, you were hired because you could turn this around quickly. That's what Jerry Reinsdorf said. And you're saying exactly what Rick Hahn said. And you could see, like, Getz was like, oh, no, like, I got to come up with a different answer now. And I thought he handled it okay. But I mean, I love the fact that AJ basically said, you said that last year, you were going to earn trust back. That didn't happen. That guy got fired. Please tell me you've got a better answer than that. And I think the answer was along the lines after that of, we're going to try to show them that we play the game differently. Okay, great. And if that happens, I'll be happy with it. you better be spending money and competing for a division next season, or nobody's going to care.
Well, and here's the thing with the White Sox in general. I don't know if it's even over the entirety of Jerry's run as owner, but certainly feels that way. There's a lot of, I never put stock into what the team tells me, okay? I can see tangibly what the team is doing, okay? I can see when Jerry's spending money and when he's letting his GM really compete, I can see that, okay? We can read the news and we can see what he's doing. Right now, with what they're trying to do with the ballpark, and they're easing the restrictions about going to the 100 level. They, of course, they added new food again.
Come on in. We got all kinds of food.
Yeah,
you can walk wherever you want to. Our new play-by-play guy's walking around, hanging out while you're drinking beers before the game. We're your friends again.
That's fine, right. And that's good.
By the way, they weren't your friends a couple years ago when they thought they were competing for championships. They didn't want anything to do with you.
Then you were dumb as fans.
Never forget that the towel for Game 3 of the divisional series, we had all kinds of fancy stuff on it, and everybody was open for business in that Game 3. In Game 4, half of the concessions seemed to be shut down, and you just got a blank bathroom towel because they didn't even expect to win Game 3. All right? So
right.
Never forget who they are. But right now, they love you. Come on out. Spend money. It's better at the ballpark. Get over here, big guy. Let me rub you on your head. We're pals.
Hey.
We're your pals, the White Sox.
Come here, Bubby. Come and get a hug from old Uncle Jerry.
Hey, Uncle Jerry loves you. Does he? Yeah.
Sure.
Isn't he threatening to move the team to Nashville, which isn't real because he would lose value of the team, and somehow it just keeps popping up in articles because they keep pushing this narrative out? Oh, pay no attention to that.
He's always talking about traveling. He loves to travel. He wants to see the whole country.
It's better at the ballpark. Tell your congressman and your state representative to make sure we get $2 billion.
I'm sorry, what's that now? $2 billion what now?
$2 billion in taxpayer dollars are going to need.
But he loves you.
He loves you. It's better at the ballpark. Check out this hot dog we have in the boozy milkshake that tastes like a campfire or whatever it is.
Yeah, we're never getting mentioned on air.
Dude, I'm going to laugh. I'm sorry. I am going to laugh at every one of those outreach things because I know what they're doing and I commend them for it. It's exactly how I would do it. It's how I learned how to do it when I took the classes in college to get my broadcast journalism degree, and we took the PR classes and stuff on the side. It's exactly what they should be doing. If they would have brought me in as a consultant, I'd be like, this is what you should do. You should be everybody's buddy now. It's better at the ballpark. It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. And just make it genuine, though. Make it stick. Just be this way from now on.
Forever. Don't change it in a couple of years again when you don't need us. Right? When you're not asking for money, don't change it. And then we'll appreciate it more.
You know this is gonna rankle some people. But do you know the whole thing with the Cubs in the 80s where everyone's like, it's just because it's Wrigley and it's just a big party and all that stuff. Right. Jerry loved that stuff.
Oh,
okay?
They want it so bad.
He has always wanted to be Wrigley Field South in that regard, okay? But you know what the Cubs always did? They meant it. They said, come out to the ballpark. It's a damn party. We don't care. It's a free-for-all.
They really didn't care.
They really didn't care. They wanted people drunk in the bleachers. Why? Because it was good for business. So you know what, Jerry? Just stick with it. If you love us, if it's better at the ballpark, then it's better at the ballpark now.
Stop knocking on the cup snakes, okay? Let's get crazy this year in the bleachers. Okay?
Cup snakes.
With less gunplay. But let's get crazy.
Less gunplay. less gunplay. Fewer gunplay, more cup snakes.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.